Hey, I'm Dustin.
And I'm Steve. Welcome back, listeners, to the finest phototainment in the world. That's right, you're listening to another episode of the Wedding Photo Hangover podcast, an irreverent look at wedding photography. This podcast, like aspirin, will help you recover from your wedding hangover. We have a super cool episode today. Dustin, do you want to tell our listeners who we have on the podcast with us right now?
I would love to introduce, with the utmost excitement, we have the famous, the celebrity, the probably one of the most well-known individuals in podcasting history, Nathan Holritz. In case you don't already know this incredible man, here are a few places you may have seen or heard of him. He is both the founder and CEO of Photographer's Edit and the beautiful voice behind the world-renowned Bokeh podcast, one of my personal favorite podcasts.
Wait, you listen to podcasts now?
Just the Bokeh podcast. That's the only one. That's actually true. Let me just put that out there. And I just discovered, little did I know, that he has a new podcast. I don't know if this is public knowledge yet or
It's got 5 episodes out. It's public.
Okay. He has a new podcast called A Love Portrait. Love that name, by the way. A podcast built on exploring the vast world of relationships. And he is a little-known Wolverine impersonator. So, I'd like to welcome you to the show, Nathan. Thank you so much for taking some time to sit down and be with the polar opposite of the Bokeh podcast.
100%. It feels like a bit of an adventure. I don't know where we're going to go with this, but I was telling you guys before we started recording, I'm excited to do something totally different and maybe in a sense go outside my comfort zone a little bit. So I love the humor that you all bring to the Wedding Hangover, and it is kind of the antithesis of what we do at Bokeh, but for that reason, I have mad respect for both of you.
Oh, thank you so much.
That is probably too kind of you. So where are you coming from today? Because from my follows of you, because I stalk you, is that you are quite the traveler. It always seems like you're in Arizona, California. Obviously, your home base is in Chattanooga, and you're kind of just all over the place.
And I am all over the place. I mean, in travels and mentally and otherwise, I feel like I'm all over the place a lot of the time, actually. But I'm currently in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And honestly, that's where I spend most of my time. I do get to travel from time to time for the sake of Photographer's Edit. And occasionally during those travels, get to even do some in-person interviews for Bokeh. I actually grew up in Japan. So I spent about 10 years of my life, a lot of my childhood in Japan. But I was born in Indiana. I've lived in Washington State, Georgia, and now Tennessee as well.
You were born where?
In
Back
Indiana.
that up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kokomo.
Wow. So technically, I guess that would make you a great Indiana man.
I hope so. Actually, Kokomo is this tiny little town outside of about an hour north of Indy. And it's apparently home to author of Clifford the Big Red Dog. So that's my tiny little claim to fame with my... I don't know. There probably isn't even, there might be 50,000 people, probably not even that in little town of Kokomo.
But you know what they do have? A great brewery called Tin Man Brewing Company.
Are you
I was
serious?
just there like 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
No
it's
way.
awesome.
I had no idea. That's really cool. I lived there for all of 2 years when I was, about this big, and I since haven't lived there. So I'd love to go back and spend a little more time.
Yeah, watch out, Clifford. They now have a brewery.
I prefer the brewery to the child's books, I'm just going to say.
Well, but what would happen if you combine the two? Like, what would Clifford the Big Red Dog slightly inebriated look like?
Or they just need to rebrand with some Big Red Dog themed beers. Like, this is the Big Red Ale. This is, they could really do a couple of unique spin-offs with that.
That's brilliant. Like, I'm already going to go search for a domain name right now. I think we should do something about that.
You should move back to Kokomo, start your own brewery, and just go wild with
100%.
children themed books.
Who needs to be in Chattanooga anyway? Come on.
Have you guys ever been
you
down
have
this
a
way
life
before?
there or anything? A few times.
I've never had the pleasure of making it that far south and not stopping. Stopping.
And stopping. It is actually a pretty cool town. It's changed quite a bit in the last decade or so. But it's actually home to one of the large, I think actually still the largest freshwater aquarium in the country. Beautiful waterfront, cool restaurants. It's becoming a pretty cool place to hang out. So yeah, come through, visit sometime. It's pretty great. Do you have either of you have kids?
Yep, we do.
Both of you do? Okay, yeah, so even better. Children's Museum and Ruby Falls and Rock City and the Incline, I think you alluded to that. It's a pretty cool place.
Nice. Someday when I have time to travel again, I would love to see that's on our list of places that aren't too far from where we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. One thing I did want to jump right into, Nathan, if you would indulge us, is in a nutshell for the listeners who have been living under a rock and don't know who you are, I'd like to know just a bit about your origin story, because I think if we have listeners out there that are like Steven and I who've been shooting our entire lives and we're old and gray and we're like at that point in our career where we're just thinking about what's next for us, what's that next chapter look like? You know, obviously we have children. We don't want to give up every single weekend anymore. And
the grave, Dustin. That's what's next for us.
Exactly. For you. But we are looking at that sort of what can we do using the skill set we've learned over the last, 12, 13 years and evolve that. And so I think you're someone who is sort of an amazing example of that. Somebody who took their photography skill set, saw a need, and then evolved that into something else. So if you could kind of give us sort of the nuts and bolts of you for just a couple minutes.
Sure. And I'll try not to ramble on too long, but the simple version.
I don't know how you're not going to with Dustin asking the broadest question I've ever heard in my life. Please tell me everything about your life. Let's start with you being born in Kokomo and what caused you to move to Japan. Go.
Yeah. Well, the simple version on the photography side is I started shooting weddings back in 2001. And the business grew, shooting as many as 30 or 40 a year. We went from film to digital photography. Post-production gets nightmarish. And so I already alluded to this, I think, before we started recording, but I'm a little bit OCD when it comes to structure and ultimately even this idea of perfection. I, for whatever reason, think that it's possible in some form or fashion. And so that gets in the way of living in business sometimes. But when it came to post-production, it was just driving me crazy, especially with that much work. And so I needed a solution for my business. I also saw, I guess, kind of looking through the eyes of an entrepreneur of sorts, I saw opportunity in the industry for yet another solution. There were already three options, I think, at the time. And they were, I think of one in particular that was kind of leading the way at that point. They were complicated, extremely pricey. Like for a wedding photographer to send a wedding to be processed is going to be something like $600 to $800 to have a wedding processed, which is not feasible for most photographers. And so I saw a need in the industry for something that was less expensive and that was also simpler. I mean, you had to get a calculator out to figure out how much this was going to cost. And then the process at the time, I don't think was particularly refined either. So something that was simple, something that was more accessible to a wider number of photographers. And of course, ultimately a solution for my photography business. So that's when Photographers Edit was launched. This is 2008. So about 11 years ago. And that's a simple version. Now, as far as, I guess there's one additional piece of motivation there, and that was I wanted to create a business that would give me even more flexibility than I had as a photographer. So I have two kids. They're now 17 and 14, quite a bit younger at the time. And being kind of constrained to the business model under which I was functioning at that point as a photographer wasn't kind of the ideal life that I wanted to live. And so I wanted to create a business that would give me even more flexibility. The catchphrase is passive income, and I know there are mixed opinions on that idea, but literally within the span of probably about between 2 and 3 years, I was able to work as little as, there's a book called The 4-Hour Workweek. Not so ironically, I was able to work as little as about 4 hours a week, and the business continued to grow. I was lucky enough to have a team that would enable that. But that was the goal. In hindsight now, if I had thrown, say, 15 hours a week into the business at that point, we'd be in a whole different place now than we already are. But that's the ultra simple version, kind of the reasoning, the motivation behind starting Photographers Edit. The last wedding that I shot under my business was 2012. So I haven't photographed for a while, but I shot for a total of about between 10 and 11 years.
That sounds amazing. But what I want to do is I want to pick apart that now. and I want to talk a little bit about how you actually started Photographer's Edit. So if you could kind of give me sort of the origin story of that. Like, were you at a laptop at a coffee shop editing other photographers' work, or did you immediately think, okay, I need to assemble a team? Or did you have like a cousin Louie that was like, hey man, I love editing photos. Let me start editing your photos. And then that light bulb went off and you're like, hey, I could have this guy edit 15 guys' photos. How did that all kind of come together?
It's actually a good question, because one of the limiting factors for the existing companies at the time was that they hadn't created a business model that was scalable. And it's easy. I know, speaking from personal experience as a photographer, a sole proprietor, it's easy to get kind of stuck in your own little world, blinders on, and you don't know what it means to scale, to think about the long term and how can I build a business in such a way that it doesn't require, only my involvement. And so a lot of business owners, photographers in particular, I think have a tendency of thinking that way, and understandably so. The businesses, the editing companies that were our competition at the time, were thinking in a similar way, and they were functioning with editors in-house. And so my thought was, well, first of all, in order to, of course, to be able to bring the price point down, we had to scale effectively. And I didn't need to keep the editing in-house if I was going to effectively scale. If we were going to avoid what was happening at the time with other companies, which is a waiting list, I had to figure out a way to be able to scale, and ideally scale quickly, of course. And so the thought was, initially, maybe I'll have a couple of editors here local in Chattanooga, and then I'll find someone, another company, the specialist of sorts, to be able to subcontract the work to, and that way we could more effectively grow and scale. I was lucky enough at that point to find a company. And so literally, well, almost from day one, probably a couple of months in or so, that we established a working relationship, and then began to develop a workflow and a process. And that process took quite a while, but had we not found a partner, and they actually ended up becoming business partners. I have 2 business partners now. So they bought into the company about 5 or 6 years in. And, but to find a partner to work with that could handle the workload and give us the flexibility and the scalability to grow and be able to handle the kind of growth that we ended up seeing, fortunately, that's what it required. So I couldn't keep it all in-house. I had to look out. And it was a beast of a time, honestly. The first year and a half or so, the amount of time that I spent training and then giving feedback, and more training and more feedback, was tough, but ultimately it's paid off. Consistency is always a challenge when you're talking about editing. I mean, just personally, but then if you're going to handle somebody else's work, how do you effectively provide consistent editing that matches their style, and do so in a way that makes sense to the photographer, and somehow correlate the way that they see things to the way that the editor sees things? I mean, it's a big challenge. It's all very, very subjective. So we've tried to develop systems that enable us to do that effectively, and we're like literally on an ongoing basis continuing to try to improve on that 11 years later. But if we don't, I think we'll end up falling short and just kind of die off. So it's important to continue to iterate, to continue to listen to feedback, and we try to do that best we can.
I love that.
So do you spend a lot of time editing then, or is it mostly just other people editing now?
I do not. No, we have a production team of about 100,
Nice.
Most of whom are focused on color correction work. And then we have a smaller team of retouchers. Probably, well, it's the majority percentage, certainly, of the work that we do currently is focused around that custom color correction work. And then we have the next kind of biggest segment is culling and color correction. So some photographers go ahead and trust us to do the culling work, take out the bad stuff, keep the rest, and process those images. And then a smaller percentage a smaller percentage of our time and resources are allocated to retouching. But and I'm sorry, I don't think I actually answered your question directly. I don't personally edit the photos anymore. There's no way. I mean, we process millions and millions of images every year, and I couldn't effectively build a company if I had my hands in it.
Yeah.
And not to get overly philosophical, but that's something we talk about a lot on Bokeh, as well as the significance of not only delegation, and ironically, I'm even continuing to learn how to effectively do that with my team even now, but the significance of delegation, certainly, but if you're going to grow a business and that enables you to actually have some free time, actually have some flexibility in your life, then you have to learn how to scale. And that involves certainly delegation. It learns how to involves learning how to effectively communicate with and to those people that you're working with. And that is not only an ongoing learning process for me, but then we're also trying to help other photographers learn the philosophical principles that underlie that process so they can effectively work with us as well.
Are there any, now looking back, are there any like hurdles or things that you were like, man, I wish I would have done that differently? Or if I had done that differently, that would have, like you said earlier, if I had put, 15 hours a week in instead of 4 hours, like Photographers Edit would be just, at another place right now.
Right.
What are some things like from your journey you can share with us and our listeners that perhaps you can help them avoid?
That's a good one. I mean, the one that I always talk about actually is not specifically tied to Photographers Edit. It goes back to my photography career, and it was the lack of attention to finances. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, and as much as my dad in particular tried to kind of teach us basic principles behind financial management, it wasn't something that carried over. And I just very simply did a very terrible job of managing money, particularly as a photographer. And it's been a learning curve that was, really is ongoing, but particularly for a segment of time, realizing how poorly I was managing money, how that was translating to, or how that was affecting my life personally, and ultimately limiting me even as a business owner. The lack of discipline when it came to managing my finances, and actually not just lack of discipline, but I guess innate to that proactivity in managing my finances. I was afraid of money. I was afraid of doing taxes. And it sounds ridiculous. And it is ridiculous because really it doesn't have to be so complicated if you just are consistent and proactive and taking care of, keeping up the books and taking care of your taxes every month. Relatively simple, especially with the technology we have these days. But I tended to shun it because I didn't like it and I was afraid of it for one reason or another. And that bit me hard too. And again, I would be in a much different place personally, potentially professionally, but certainly personally now, had, 15, close to 20 years ago even now, had I done a better job of managing my money. Now, fast forward, go to Photographers Edit. And the other thing that I would say that I've learned is the significance of, what we were just talking about, delegation. It is so important if you want to grow, to learn to give up control. And this idea of, in fact, I just recently heard Gary Vaynerchuk talking about this idea that we get in our head that somebody else can't do something as good as us, or if it's not done the exact same way, it's not going to be good enough. Somebody's not going to be happy. The brand's not going to be represented well, et cetera, et cetera. That is something that I've let get in the way of probably further growth as well. So learning to delegate, that's one thing. And it's ironic, of course, considering what Photographers Edit is all about, but it's something that I'm still learning to do better. And then the other thing, I guess the third thing would be, and it sounds so cliche because there's so much conversation about this right now, but I guess I would phrase it differently. Learning to be comfortable with myself, learning to set aside insecurities that, stem from past experiences and that have psychological roots that I know that's not what this podcast is about. I could certainly break down for you a little bit, but understanding the psychology that drives how I feel and think, and learning to step beyond that for the sake of moving forward, getting things done. I've seen opportunity in front of me and at times have held back from pursuing opportunity for fear of somebody else's opinion of me, whether as a coworker, a business partner, or otherwise. That kind of apprehension, which again is all rooted in insecurity, I think that's the piece that's not talked about enough. That has gotten in the way of me being a better business owner. So learning to step beyond that, certainly function as a business owner intelligently, but there's an element still that I think, an element of significance we can give to this idea of following our gut. Gut that comes from, hopefully, from actual experience and understanding of the way that business works, the way the market works, and saying, you know what, that's an opportunity, that's something that needs to be done, and going after it without fear of this person's going to say this thing or think that thing. Just going for it, take advantage of opportunity. That would be the other thing I would point out.
Cool. Yeah, I'm always trying to think about, what things are coming my way that I pass on because I'm too afraid at this given time, that maybe I'm too busy or I have too much going on or whatnot. And, I regret that later on, but it's hard to live in that stage or in that state.
Well, I think, there's so much opportunity around us, and this is, whether it's for a photographer looking at their local market and trying to figure out the business model that they want to establish. If they take, and it really isn't overly difficult, if you take a time to step back and just look at the market, the way that photographers are behaving, the way that the actual market, the potential clients are behaving, you can see opportunity, holes in the market. There's opportunity to go after that. And a lot of time, insecurity in one form or another holds photographers back from taking advantage of those opportunities. And you hear these kinds of stories really kind of all the time in culture, probably even just conversation with friends and family. They're like, I had this idea once, and then I didn't do it. And now look, there's this company, this massive company, and the CEO is a multimillionaire. And if only I had done that thing. I don't know. We have, again, as cliche as it kind of sounds, we have one life to live. There's opportunity all around us if we just keep our eyes open and go for it. The worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work out, and then you course correct. And I think, back to the conversation about insecurity, part of the insecurity is also tied to what I alluded to earlier, this tendency toward a desire for not perfection, and that I actually think there's perfection, but doing it just right. That also has been a limiting factor for me. And I've learned a lot in the last couple of years or so about just doing it and figuring it out along the way, or if need be, course correct along the way. It's not a big deal to do that. The key is that you're proactive. And I have a particular set of values that I review, just kind of keep front and center, literally actually on my phone screensaver. And one of those values that I want to consistently live by is that the idea of proactivity. When I think about proactivity, I'm thinking about moving forward. Yeah, you're going to hit hiccups and you're going to make mistakes and screw up and do some stupid stuff, but you're going to continue to push forward. And so that's kind of the thought process that drives more of what I do now. Is there's opportunity, I go for it. It may not be just right to begin with, but I'll course correct, I'll adjust, I'll keep moving forward.
Well, now that we all feel inferior to you, Nathan,
let me tell you about how I've failed in that regard a million times over.
Sure. Well, a big part of what you talk about.
Whoa! I'm waiting. I want to hear all the failure now. Come on, let's bring it out.
Day in, day out. No, I mean honestly, it is an issue for me. Consistency. So when I think about the notion of moving forward, I think, to move forward, to be truly proactive, you need to continue to move forward, even if it's small steps, consistently. But I also know that one of my shortcomings is a tendency to be kind of, I'll say this, it's extreme, but manic depressive, in the sense that I like to go like really, really hard for a short amount of time, and that feels good, and get good response from social media, or get good response looking at the numbers of the company, and then I get burnt out because I just went way too hard, and then I pull back for a segment of time, and this has happened for me on a business level. It's happened personally, emotionally. It's affected relationships, and so proactivity is great. Moving forward is great, but figuring out a pace at which you can do so consistently is, I think, also important, and that's something else that I'm really working at now too. So to your question, Stephen, I think, or to the point that you were making, I think that my biggest shortcoming, I feel like I'm doing better in the last couple of months or so, but my biggest shortcoming is even if it's for a day or if it's a week or maybe even a month of just like going to town, tons of podcast interviews and all kinds of work with clients. And I mean, the list goes on, but I do that, and then I burn out and I fall off. Instead of that kind of behavioral pattern, realizing the significance of consistency in the way that I engage with work, that I engage in my relationships with others, the emotional state that I maintain, that is where I've fallen short, but I feel like I'm continuing to get better at this point. And I see it. I see the positive results, particularly in business. And it's still something that I'm working at even more in my relationships with my kids, with my girlfriend as well. There's some work to be done there, but I'm seeing the positive benefits of being proactive in that regard.
Cool.
So speaking of your girlfriend, does she have anything to do with your new podcast?
That's a great question.
Are you thinking like, wow, I don't want to screw this up. I really like this girl. Let me talk to as many people as I can about where they screwed up and just be proactive about it.
Yeah. So a love portrait A Love Portrait is a podcast that I started, it's been probably 8 months or so ago. Anyway, it's been a little bit ago. There are only 5 episodes out currently, and in full transparency, I ended up with a really full plate that's kept me from being able to effectively manage that podcast in addition to Photographer's Edit and the Bokeh podcast. And then we're actually in the process of working on the launch of yet another company playing in the wedding and photography space. And so
you got to get back down to that 4-hour work week.
Exactly. Right. Well, I've kind of, and I told you, I'm like this, right? That the up and down extremes. So I'm kind of overcompensating for the 4-hour work weeks back in the day. But there's, to our earlier conversation, there's a lot of opportunity. And so I'm trying to capitalize on that. But to your question about the podcast, it was something that I wanted to do for the sake of exploring, relationships, so that I could learn, so that I could get better in relationships. I had a marriage that I wouldn't say failed. I think failed is a word that's just kind of thrown out there and like without real context or meaning. I mean, it failed in the sense that it didn't work out, but it was a relationship that ultimately went south, that didn't work out. I have a pretty good relationship with Amber, my ex, my kid's mom, but I learned a lot through that. I learned a lot through other relationships as well. And now I have the opportunity to be in a relationship with my girlfriend, Jill. And I've learned so much from her as well. But there's obviously a lot of different perspectives on how to have a great relationship, and not just romantic relationships, friendships, work relationships, relationships with family. And
podcast hosts, relationships.
100%. Yeah, those podcast hosts, they can be a difficult bunch. But in all seriousness, I mean, there's like that's an endless topic, right? Like if you're going to pick a topic to have a podcast on, literally I could do podcasts for the next 80 years and never run out of guests and things to talk about. So whereas there are underlying principles, I think a few principles that drive healthy relationships, there are different stories innate to these relationships and slightly different perspectives. And the idea of exploring what it takes to have a happy relationship, romantic or otherwise, that was interesting to me. I also have a kind of a long-term goal of becoming a therapist, a psychologist. And I'm going to have to go back to school because I never finished school. So I'll get my bachelor's and master's and open a practice, potentially do some stuff through podcasting or, online teaching or therapy counseling. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet, but the thought process with the podcast as well was, all right, instead of just waiting until the time is right to go back to school and get those degrees and do those things, let me do something about it. And so what I can do, at least, I can't be the professional necessarily offering advice, although I can, share what I've learned thus far. I can at least create conversation that will hopefully add value to the world at large when it comes to how to create a better relationship. And so that was the thought process. It's on hold for the moment, but I hope that I have the opportunity to get back to that. And again, there are just endless conversations to be had around the topic.
So you're just a entrepreneur running a business, editing millions and millions of photos a year, running 2 podcasts, and you're just thinking, maybe someday I'll retire and become a psychologist.
100%. And as funny as it may sound, I love relationships. I love connection. It's largely what drove the podcast, Bokeh podcast. Having gone through separation with my ex, and then kind of realizing just like as an individual, as a human being, I got married when I was 20 and I came out of a very conservative household, kind of a bubble of an environment. And I didn't really have, again, I'm going to borrow a cliche phrase here, but I didn't really have an identity. And it's not that I think this idea of knowing who you are is a bit of a misnomer. I think ultimately we get to decide who we want to be. We all have certain tendencies and interests and desires, but you can track all that back to life experience and the development of your psychology, and so much of it is tied to those things. So I don't think it's this. I don't think it's this kind of mystery, this adventure that you're on to go find who you are. I think that's just a distorted way of looking at ourselves as human beings, and I think it's limiting, in fact. So what I've realized is the significance of deciding who I want to be. But even to get to the point where I realized that is a healthier approach to life, being an individual and interacting with others, took me some time. So there was a span of time there where I just pulled back from again, the world at large, the industry in particular, and was disconnected from the industry, despite the fact that I'd been so connected previously as a photographer. And the podcast was an opportunity to reconnect, to have conversation. And it's been a big challenge to learn how to become a better conversationalist, how to become a better interviewer and a host. And I've enjoyed that experience. But ultimately, that type of interaction, that one-on-one interaction, where hopefully there's opportunity to go beyond just the surface level and get to know somebody and explore their psychology, then ultimately try to help them with whatever issue that they're dealing with, is extremely appealing to me. And the idea of maybe living even a bit off the grid somewhere, having an office potentially in a small town or nearby a larger town, and
like Kokomo.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Especially with the the Big Red, what were we going to call it? The beer?
Big red ale. Yep.
Big red ale.
Wait.
Perfect.
So now you're going to be a psychologist in a small town like Kokomo, and also you're going to have a brewery going as well. You're piling stuff back on again.
And encourage the alcoholic tendencies of my patients. Yeah.
That's what you'll prescribe to all your patients.
100%.
I can't help you today in this therapy session, but my brewery can help you out a lot.
You need one of these. Yeah.
It's right next door, coincidentally.
Let's go.
Tomorrow we're going to meet back together again and talk about your alcoholism. It's all good.
100%. Hey, how do you
Got that
expect that
loop
I'm going to
going.
get repeat clients? Yeah, exactly.
It's I think that's one of your gifts, Nathan, is you get to kind of see little holes in the market and you kind of capitalize on those. And if you can be both a therapist and a brewery owner, I think there's something to be said there.
If you can provide the solutions to the problems and also cause the problems, it's a great business to be in.
Endless money to be made. Yep.
So are we going to get a little taste of maybe what's on the horizon? What's this new venture, this new company that you're kind of exploring or thinking about or tinkering with?
Yeah.
Listen, you can't just ask that. He's still in the process. He's not. Is he even ready to launch? You don't know this.
Just give us a tease.
Well, it's and I don't know how soon these podcast episodes come out, but hopefully within the next 6 weeks or so, we'll be launching the first version of this app, which very simply is a tool that enables photographers and wedding coordinators to collaborate on events, the planning of events, particularly when it comes to managing the timeline and the shot list. So most interactions that involve conversations around the timeline and the shot list these days happen via email. And maybe in addition to that email, they're attaching Word docs. It's just a very dated way of collaborating on the management of the event. So we are in the process right now of finishing a tool that is going to enable the photographer, the coordinator, the event coordinator, and also the client to collaborate on the timeline, the shot list, and ultimately be able to more effectively and efficiently manage an event.
There you go.
Can we rope videographers in on that app as well?
Nope,
100%.
they're not invited.
Well, so initially this is, for the sake of specificity and marketing and having a brand new product and kind of managing the influx of users, we're going to initially market specifically to photographers and coordinators, but yeah, we're definitely going to open up, because naturally when you're thinking about relationships, and honestly, a lot of what I do and hope to continue to do throughout my life as a business owner, potentially as a psychologist, all centers around time and relationships. So Photographers Edit is about that. The Bokeh podcast is largely about time and relationships. And then ultimately, Miilu is the name of this app. It's actually a play on a Japanese word, which means to see. Kind of playing on this idea that, of course, not only the photography tied to the idea of seeing a scene and photographing it, capturing it, but also as a coordinator, you've got this kind of big picture view, overseeing the timeline of this particular event. So it's playing on that idea. Miilu, spelled M-I-I-L-U. Miilu is going to ultimately enable, or actually hopefully not only enable relationships, but better relationships, right? It makes it easier to collaborate with those people that you're going to work with on an event. And that doesn't just involve the photographer, the coordinator, but now you're also talking about the florist, the event location itself, the caterer, the baker, et cetera. So there are a lot of relationships involved there. And this platform, initially, we have some longer term plans that I won't get into right now, but initially this platform is going to be focused on enabling very streamlined collaboration on events.
See, and here I was, Stephen, thinking Nathan was going to announce the photographer's edit version for real estate photographers. That's what I was. That's why I was asking.
You were hoping Nathan would come on our podcast and just say, "Hey, I've built this thing that would help you out, Dustin." Yep.
It's all, personally. It's really what it's all about.
Well, it's not so ironically the future plans associated with this brand, potentially a secondary brand, will actually help solve that solution. So, to be continued.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for real estate stuff?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, there is actually a really great opportunity there, kind of on multiple levels, not only addressing photographic needs, but also on the editing side. And we're going to be working on a solution that will address that as well.
Yeah, because I'm tired of sending them to some company in Australia.
We won't mention any names.
All right. You want to do some Q&A?
100%. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do some Q&A.
But Steve.
Noelle from a random Facebook group asks, I did a photo recently with a group of people trying to spell out a word with their bodies. They were not super fit, nor were they super flexible. As a result, the photo just looks like a group of people. I'm going to try to fix this, but how much liquefying is too much liquefying?
I don't even know where to go with that. Again, to you guys and your ability to incorporate humor, I honestly don't even know where to go with that. How much liquefying is too much liquefying?
Yeah. Like, when we get to the point where you can't really tell it's people anymore, it's just like clothing in the shape of, I don't know, I'm guessing he's probably trying to do like maybe the date of the wedding or maybe like the word love or something wedding related. It was in a wedding Facebook group that I found it. So when it just looks like maybe an art piece now, and you no longer can tell that there are people in it, has he gone too far? Has Noelle gone too far?
100%. Now, but the context of the Facebook group helps, yeah. And now I can picture not only that initial post, but then probably the comments underneath it. Yeah, when the let's just say it's a bride and a groom, and the bride has been liquefied, and the husband looks at that and says, "Honey," the finished image, the print, whatever it might be, and says, "Honey, you're absolutely stunning. I'm so lucky to be with you." Then you know that they did just enough. When the groom looks at that picture of his bride and says, "Holy crap, who is that?" Then you know a little too much liquefying.
Or he says, I'm so happy I love you.
Fair enough.
What about when the groom looks at it and he's like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing work of art. This is like Salvador Dali came and shot our wedding.
And she's
is that too much?
What, I'm not good enough for you as I am? Yeah.
I'm just trying to picture that conversation when the photographer contacts Photographer's Edit with this request. And they're like, so I've got this photo. It's a group shot. No one apparently knows what yoga is. And so I couldn't get the LOVE spelled out. I really need you guys to make this happen. What is the response from Photographer's Edit to said photographer?
Probably, I'm sorry, we can't do that. We are not able to offer such service.
That's where capitalism takes over for me, Nathan. And I'm like, well, for $100 an hour.
You're raising your hand?
We can get some bridesmaids' dresses rented. We got a couple guys here at the office with suits. We'll restage this photo with flexible individuals. And then we'll just Photoshop that bride and groom right on into that picture. It'll be
I thought you were going to
perfect.
say for $100 an hour, I can fix this for you, and then you were just going to send it off to that company in Australia you use for all your real estate edits.
That is true too. We could go that route.
Oh man, guys, I'm such a nerd. I don't even know how to handle your style of humor. This is too funny.
What you take as humor is really just reality for us.
Dustin, do you want to pick another one?
Joan from a random Facebook group asks the following. I'm having trouble getting a wedding edited. I sit down to edit. I edit one photo. I get distracted, and an hour later, I turn off Orange is the New Black and edit another photo. But then I get distracted again, and it's another hour later, another episode of Orange is the New Black, and I'm turning it off again. I edit another photo, and suddenly I find myself looking at orange jumpsuits on Amazon with 3 jumpsuits in my cart, but nothing purchased nor shipped yet. So I purchase the jumpsuits. I get back to editing and get one more photo in, and then an hour goes by, and I realize I'm Googling petty crimes that could get me in jail. How do I focus on editing and staying out of jail?
Don't even worry about editing. Just send us the work, and you can go watch your Orange is the New Black.
Wow, that was we just really teed that question up for you, Nathan.
I mean, yeah, that doesn't get any easier.
I mean, really, Joan, when you look at it, do you really need to be editing? Like, you could be in jail right now. Think about that life. You're no longer watching Orange is the New Black. Now you're living Orange is the New Black. I feel like that's where Joan's going, right?
Probably so. I think you got to figure it out, Steven.
So, Nathan, what are some petty crimes Joan could commit?
Well, she's probably, did it say that she was going to buy the jumpsuit? She could start with stealing the jumpsuit. There's a bit of
that's
kind
what
of
I like.
meta irony going on there, where you're like, you're stealing.
See, that would involve her leaving her house, though. It sounds like Joan would prefer to just sit and Google and watch TV.
Dustin, I don't know if you're familiar with this thing called hacking, but Joan could totally hack those jumpsuits right off of Amazon.
That's true.
So my question, though, Nathan, for you, as a sort of the way my brain works, is have you ever thought about developing an app or a website using technology to target photographers who are in prison as potential editors or photographers? I mean, think about that potential. They can't go out and shoot anymore.
True.
They're, confined to a small area. All they need is an internet connection. Most smuggle cell phones in at one point or another, so I'm told.
They could actually, if they were smuggling in smartphones, they could even edit on their phone.
Exactly. I think you have a whole new division you could add to your workforce.
See, Dustin, the way I thought you were going with that is there would be a partnership Nathan could develop with, say, I don't know, Netflix, maybe Amazon Prime, Hulu. So when a photographer sends their photos into Photographer's Edit, they hit that submit button and it just automatically brings up Netflix straight for them. So now they can just watch their favorite show until, their photos come back and they're all done. And, you can measure out the length of time it would take to get an wedding edited based on how many episodes of Orange is the New Black that the photographer could watch.
That's actually a pretty brilliant idea. We're in the process of building a calculator right now that makes it more practical for photographers to be able to see how much time they're gaining back. So we could just plug in, like we could add an extra drop down there, which is your favorite show, and then translate that to the number of hours or episodes that they get to watch as a result of outsourcing their editing. I think that's a great idea.
It's a great idea, but it does make me feel like a lesser human being when I'm really just sending off my photos so I can watch more Game of Thrones or Orange is the New Black. Let's say play with my children, take my wife out for dinner.
Oh, no. Let's take it up a notch. Instead of kicking them out to Netflix or Hulu or something like that, we kick them out to Creative Live. So now they're educating themselves to be a better photographer while their photos are getting edited.
Okay. That's a little better.
Do you feel better about that, Dustin?
Just a touch.
Okay.
But I think there is something to be said about maybe contacting the producers of Orange is the New Black and seeing if maybe you can work some photographer's edit into that show. Maybe they're, instead of working in the kitchen, maybe they're editing photos when they're on, work release or whatever. I have
to paint this scene though. For those of you listening in, we're actually on video chat right now, and I keep watching Steven's response. Like, Dustin starts to say something, and somehow Steven's already reading his mind, and he knows it's going to be funny, and he kind of puts his hand over his face and starts laughing already, like preemptively. Dustin, you must be quite hilarious.
No. Steven is just thinking, why am I doing this podcast with this guy?
I'm thinking about how long it would take me to go back to school to get my psychology degree.
Because Dustin needs a lot of therapy. There's a lot of underlying issues here.
Should we talk about that, Dustin? How does that make you feel?
Let's save that for your other podcast. Steven, did you want to take the next one?
Yeah, I think we got time for maybe one more, right?
Okay.
Dustin, you said you had a hard stopping point at 2:10, so trying to keep you getting to your kids on time so that you can actually, get them picked up and not be sent to child services for leaving your kids alone at a stranger's house.
That is always my goal every day and every week, is how to not lose custody of my children.
Way to set the bar really high. That's good.
That's my goal. I'm just a bar setter.
So Bart from a random Facebook group writes, "My computer don't click and the Pix donut look good. I have Sharpie. Can I fix to print?"
So can you translate that trailer talk for us, Steven?
Got it.
Okay.
So what Bart's saying is, my computer don't click and the Pix donut look good. I have Sharpie. Can I use to fix print?
Okay, one more time, just a little deeper translation for us.
Okay.
Wait, you got to use that podcasting host voice of yours. It might help.
My computer don't click and the Pix donut look good. I have Sharpie. Can I use to fix print?
Now do it with more of like a sort of a southern Mississippi.
Southern Mississippi.
First time looking at a computer. Yeah, something.
Oh, we'll see how this one goes. My computer don't click and the Pix don't look good. I have Sharpie. Can I fix to print?
Yeah,
Well
the
done.
answer is yes. The answer is yes. I think we have time for one more question.
You got it that time with that one? Gunnar from a random Facebook group. A client just said their skin doesn't look right in any photos I delivered. I checked all the photos immediately in fear, but the white balance looks great. Asked the client what is wrong, and they said there's not enough purple in their skin. We went back and forth on some different edits, trying to make this couple happy, but I'm afraid they're just grimacing me. How do I convince these people not to go full Barney? So I think the problem is their skin looks too much like human skin. They want to get some more purple in their skin.
As
and
some
this
do.
photographer doesn't want to go full Barney. So doesn't want to turn them into dinosaurs, purple dinosaurs. So how would you tell your editors, your manager, your people managing your editors to approach this sort of situation where a client wants very purple skin?
I would just tell them that like brand of dinosaur we don't really do. Like maybe like what's something that's got a little bit more. Is it a brontosaurus?
We don't do Barneys here. We could do a Baby Bop for you, but Barney
maybe,
not so much.
Wasn't Baby Bop a Triceratops though?
Yes, she was.
Yeah. We could do Triceratops, not so much the Barney.
Yeah, we got to get it some green in the skin, a little green and yellow.
100%.
I would say due to copyright law and copyright infringement that we can't go full Barney. We don't have the licensing yet. However, we are interested in purchasing said license to take our clients full Barney. So for $100 an hour here at Photographers Edit, and that's per person in your bridal party, we could take you full Barney. And I think that's the direction I would go. And I would just make everybody I would just take photos from Barney and I would just Photoshop everyone in the wedding to look like purple dinosaurs.
I think that works.
But if we can break down the question a little bit, they did say, I'm afraid they're grimacing me, and grimacing was capitalized. So that's a McDonald's reference right there.
That's true.
What is going on with this person?
What is going on with you guys that you could spend this much time on this question? That's the real question.
These are the hard-hitting things we answer, Nathan.
These are the sorts of things that people need to know about.
Fair enough.
The sorts of things that, you can't just sit there and not watch Orange is the New Black. You have to watch Orange is the New Black. This is a podcast not about needs. It's about wants, right, Dustin?
The dark alley.
I've completely abandoned the need thing. Yeah, we're into wants now. This podcast is about our innermost desires. Nathan, which McDonald's character do you find to be the most visually appealing? Fry Kids?
Ronald, of course.
Ronald. Ronald is so creepy.
I never did get the whole, like, what people's obsession with clowns is, like, why people are so afraid of clowns. I don't really get that. So I'm going to go with Ronald.
The truth comes out about why Nathan wants to be a psychologist now. He's like, I really need to get to the bottom of this clown issue.
I was going to say, you'll learn that. You'll learn that when you go back to school, Nathan.
The sole motivation for becoming a psychologist, why do people freak out about clowns so much? Yeah.
We thought, based on how he was talking earlier, he really just wanted to do it to help people become better versions of themselves, have better relationships, all these things. But we get right down to it. It's clowns. Can't figure them out.
He watched it, and he was like, this doesn't seem that scary.
No.
I'd gladly go into the sewers with that guy. I bet it's great down there.
I'm sure it's a lot of fun.
Which McDonald's character do you visually enjoy looking at the most?
Jeez, that's a tough one. Man,
aesthetically pleasing McDonald's character. Go.
What's the robber guy's name?
The Hamburglar?
Hamburglar.
I don't know how you remember that. Yeah, I couldn't think of it either. The robber guy. I like the robber guy.
You guys are back on that Orange is the New Black train now.
Steven has a lot of time on his hands, Nathan. He lives that 4-hour work week, so he has plenty of time to catch up on Barney and review, animated characters from McDonald's advertisements.
I bet you're the one that, do you still have the collection of all the toys from your kids' meals as a kid?
Currently working on getting my kids all those toys right now. They're not mine anymore.
You should see his Beanie Baby collection.
Nice.
My children aren't allowed to open the toys though, but yeah. My mom was murderous about those Beanie Babies at McDonald's, and we ate McDonald's every single day for like a month so she could try to get all the Beanie Babies, and guess what? Never got them all.
Wow.
She even went to she coordinated with the people online to try to do trade-ups to get the Beanie Babies she didn't have. Okay. I don't know what's going on. I think my mom was having a mental breakdown because she had 5 children.
Do you have younger or older siblings?
I'm smack dab in the middle. I got 2 older, 2 younger.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. So it was like an escape of sorts, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. She was like, if I can just get them to McDonald's, I don't have to worry about them for a few minutes. They will eat their burgers and their fries, and then they will have a toy to play with.
And I will be rewarded with a sweet, sweet bag of beans.
Nice.
Man, oh man.
I think at one point in time, like my sister lives in the house we grew up in now. She bought it from my mom, and I think she found a bag, like a garbage bag full of Beanie Babies at one point in time while cleaning out the house. It was no bueno.
What do you collect, Dustin?
Cash mainly, gold bars, a few diamonds here and there, and then the broken dreams of my clients. Wow, really what I'm after.
Again, setting that bar high, huh?
Yeah.
Nathan, do you collect anything?
No, I don't.
You don't collect anything?
I know, he's a minimalist.
The best I ever did with collecting, though, was a baseball card. Did you ever collect baseball cards as a kid? Or do you still?
Yes. I do not still.
Pokemon cards? Yeah. Similar.
My son collects Pokemon cards.
Okay. Baseball cards, I got a signed Mickey Mantle, like in a 50-cent pack of cards. I got a Mickey Mantle card that was signed that I sold for $500, and I bought kid things. So a bicycle and a joystick for my computer to play a flight simulator. Very fancy.
So Mickey Mantle, for those of us who don't follow baseball, that's like,
oh my gosh, Dustin.
That's like a holographic Charizard, right?
Exactly.
Kind of similar.
100%.
First edition.
And signed, by the way.
Yep. Signed by Char himself.
Absolutely.
You got a signed baseball card in just like a normal 50-cent pack?
Yeah, it was some series that they were doing at the time, and 50-cent pack. And not only that, it was worse because my friend spent his own money. We're in 6th grade at the time, and He's like, here, I'll buy you, this pack of cards for you. And I walked away and sold that card for $500.
And back then, that was so much more money.
It was a lot of money. And he didn't even get a cut of it, sadly.
Oh, wow.
I'm just that cool.
That friend is now living on the streets, and
all because of that. Yeah.
all because of that moment.
Plotting his revenge every single day.
The anti-photographer said it.
He's coming for you, Nathan. Watch out.
Maybe that's the clown in it. It's that guy who's still pissed off.
Yep. He's living in the sewers.
Found a way to
Took on
change himself into a big old spider. And oh, man, this is a spoiler for it.
And then secretly his plot was foiled because Nathan isn't afraid of clowns. So he's like, damn it, no. So,
But Nathan, are you afraid of spiders?
Oh, no, actually, I was just looking at a tarantula the other day that was like the size of my hand. It's incredible.
Were you holding it or looking at it?
I didn't get to hold it, no, but I totally would. I think that'd be kind of cool.
When I was in high school, my AP bio teacher had a tarantula that he just let run around the room. Like, close all the doors, put stuff underneath them so the tarantula can escape. And then it would just run around the room, and every once in a while it would crawl up on a kid in the class. It was super, super creepy when it would crawl across your face or your head. Yeah.
Did anybody ever get bit?
One kid once complained that they got bit. I think that it was just somebody seeking attention. I don't think they actually got bit, though. Like, there were no puncture marks on their hand or anything. I think they were just saying they got bit, but...
Okay. So you would never have a spider as a pet, then?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
My daughter's got this...
My wife is deathly afraid of spiders, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, so no spiders. My daughter has this snake, actually, that is... well, it's a python, like a ball python, I think. And
okay, so you just came on here to tell us that you're the cool dad. Is that it?
Oh, no, not at all. No, I'm a total, as everybody can hear, I'm a total nerd. But we got her this snake. She wanted this as a gift for Christmas or something, or for a birthday, maybe. And this thing will eat mice. They're striking. The speed at which they strike is insane. Like, and I look like a fool in front of it. So we would feed it. In the past, we'd feed it with a pair of chopsticks. You pick up the mouse is already dead, and you hold the mouse over its mouth. I'm doing this on video, like everybody listening can see me, but
you're doing a great job describing it. They can picture it in their heads.
Grabbing the mouse with a pair of chopsticks, hold it over the snake, and the thing snapped at me. Well, I think my son was shooting video with a slow-mo camera, and you can see the snake strikes at the mouse, has enough time to strike and pull back before I even begin to respond and yank the thing back. The speed at which they can respond just far surpasses my ability, or I guess human ability, to respond. It's pretty incredible, actually, to watch. But it's not particularly frightening. Do you guys like snakes?
Snakes are cool.
I can't say that I've ever been in a situation where I'm like, I could go hang out with this monkey or this snake. I would,
I would
snake? Probably not choose the snake. That probably would not be the first thing that jumps into my mind. But yeah, I love that you love them, though, Nathan.
Thank you, Dustin. You made me feel better. Thank you.
Do you only feed the snake dead mice, or have you ever snuck a live one in there?
We haven't. Now, my brother used to have. So in Tennessee, apparently there's some law that keeps you from being able to sell live snakes through the store. So they only sell frozen ones. You have to get the frozen one. It's this kind of ridiculous process. You go buy the frozen mouse, bring it home. My daughter takes a mug and fills it up with hot water, uses tongs, sticks the mouse in the water, thaws the mouse out, gets it warm enough to where the snake doesn't think that it's dead, and then feeds it to the snake. My brother used to have this monitor of sorts, this lizard, and he would feed it live mouse, and it would grab. Saw this thing. It's the most brutal. I mean, you think Game of Thrones is brutal? You got to watch a monitor eat a live mouse. It would grab the mouse and then slam it against the sides of the cage until it was dead or mostly dead, and then swallow it. Brutal.
Wow.
I don't know how we got there, but yeah, that was quite the scene to watch.
So you just got a freezer full of dead mice at your house.
We usually buy them one at a time.
How often do you have to feed the snake?
But once a week or two. Not very often.
See, I did a photo shoot for like a zookeeper that takes care of the reptiles. And I asked him the same question, was like, do you ever feed them live mice or whatever? He's like, oh, no, that would be inhumane. And they feed them, dead ones. And he's like, I'm like, where do you get dead mice? And he's like, oh, they come like freeze dried from a company. And I'm like, so it's inhumane to feed them live mice. But do you ever think where these dead mice are coming from? It's not like, people are finding dead mice, freezing them and sending them to you. They're essentially growing mice and killing them and sending them to you. And he's like, I've never really thought about it like that before.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, these dead mice, they didn't even have a chance. A human grew them in a box and then killed them, freeze-dried them, sent them to them. If they at least put the mouse alive in the cage, there's a chance that mouse could survive. It could sneak out. Who knows?
It's got a blade that it smuggled with it on its trip, and it could whip it out like a saber and just go to town and battle that snake. But no chance at all,
Nope.
Stephen.
So the mouse has a shiv. So now we're back to Orange is the New Black.
That's where I was trying to take
Full
it.
circle.
Thanks for connecting those dots.
All right, Dustin, we've already kept you over your time that you had to go. So we need to wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast with us today, Nathan. It was really awesome to hear you talk about everything you're trying to do with your business and your dreams for your future and stuff like that. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. Like, it was super motivating to listen to you today.
Oh,
And thanks for joking around with us too.
I tried, man. I you guys, truly, I have so much respect for the format and the style, and I'm sorry that I don't live up to that standard, but I love it. I think it's great, and hopefully something that I said earlier is of value to your listeners as well. But more power to you guys. I love this.
Forget our listeners. It was valuable to me.
Yeah. But we don't do this
over
for
here
the
taking
listeners,
notes.
Nathan. We do this for us. The listener part, that's just sort of a byproduct of this podcast. But where can people go to find out more about you in the event that, for whatever reason, they did find value in the podcast with you, and they're like, man, this guy is legit. Steve and Dustin are a joke. I want to know more about this guy.
Really simple. You just go to Nathan, Nathan Holritz.com, and it'll literally link to everything from there. So really all the projects.
I think the name they're going to have trouble spelling is the last one, not the first one.
Fair enough. Holritz. You got it. Yeah, NathanHolritz.com. We talked about Photographers Edit earlier. If you just go to photographers, plural, photographersedit.com, you can go directly there. Or the podcast, it's Bokeh, bokehpodcast.com. And by the way, for all those of you who are like, Bokeh, that's not how you pronounce it. It is originally actually a Japanese word, Bokeh. But if I were to go around saying, welcome to the Bokeh podcast, I think I get some really weird looks and comments about me being pretentious or something. So we call it Bokeh.
But in Japan, you would be the biggest podcast in all of the world.
That's true. In all of the world, in Japan. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. They'd be like, finally, an American who pronounces this correctly. We must listen.
Shall I leave you with a Japanese a Japanese word or Japanese phrase?
Sure.
Absolutely.
All right. So actually, you know what? Little trivia. Actually, I'll leave you with trivia. So everybody says karaoke. Do you have any idea how you actually pronounce the word karaoke?
Karaoke.
No, not
Karaoke.
quite. It was very close, but not quite. No, karaoke is actually pronounced karaoke.
So that was my next guess.
Wow.
Yes, karaoke. So it's a Japanese word as well. But I hear that all at karaoke. We're going to go sing karaoke. I don't know how we ended up at karaoke, but it is actually karaoke. Another one, you don't hear it as much, but futon. You're going to go sit on a futon or sleep on a futon. Is just simply futon.
That sounds more
Doesn't
French.
sound as good as we're going to get nasty on this futon.
Fair enough.
No, but I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there that might be college age who are like, oh, now when I go out to the bar, I'm like, hey, you want to come back? I got a futon. Now they can really play that up.
But actually, for those that are going to the bar, I've got a better one for you, and I'll end with this. So, you hear, I think most people are pretty familiar with cin cin being Italian for cheers. Have you heard that phrase before?
Mm-hmm.
Have either of you been to Italy before? I'm getting like mixed.
Yep.
No? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Never been to Italy, but I've heard the phrase.
So, but you'll hear that chin chin is cheers in Italian, or something comparable. In Japanese, that means penis. So the next time that you go cheers in Italy, you can keep that in mind and try to keep a straight face, or not.
Yeah. So on that note, ching ching. All right, Nathan, thank you so much again for coming on. I hope everybody who listens to this podcast has an opportunity to go check out the Bokeh podcast if they have not already, and send some love your way, my friend.
100%. Thank you.
And now
guys.
everybody, the next time they're at the Olive Garden, will have a real good laugh.
Because when you're here, you're family.
Yep. Penis family.
Penis family.
Chin chin.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Wedding Photo Hangover podcast with your hosts, Dustin and Steve. And this week, with Nathan as well. If you want to help us out, jump on iTunes or Stitcher and leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Wedding Photo Hangover or on Twitter at WedPicHangover. Dustin is on Instagram at Dustin_McGibbon, and Steven is at Steven Van Elk. If you want to get involved with the awesome community of listeners, join the Wedding Hangover Facebook group. But if you really want to warm our hearts, head on over to StephenDustinSaveTheWorld.com, otherwise known as Patreon.com/WPH, and you can sign up to support us for as little as $1 a month, or if you want to bump it up to that next level, at the $5 a month level, we are creating extra episodes of the podcast that are just everyone's favorite part, just the Q&A. Thanks so much for listening. And we'll see you next time. Your head is pounding, your limbs feel like dead weight, and your entire being aches for the sweet embrace of death.
Sweet.
That's right, next Sunday after you shoot another wedding.
Another wedding.
Man,
Dun, dun,
this feels a little
dun.
disjointed because we recorded the interview earlier today, and now we're recording the outro much later in the day, which means that I went from drinking coffee to drinking a great Indiana beer for a great Indiana man. That's right. It's me, Steve Van Elk. And I'm here to tell you that I'm drinking the Taxman Brewing Company Raspberry Ginger Exemption Ale.
I just bought one of those.
It's a Belgian-style triple ale with fruit and spices. Dustin, did you really just buy some of these?
Yeah, I sent you a picture.
They're amazing, Dustin. They're very good. I bought them for
Good.
Jen, and I might drink them all because they're very good.
I bought them for you in the event that you would come visit me.
In the event that I would come visit you, I might be up there. This weekend.
What?
No, not this weekend. Next weekend.
Yeah.
On Sunday.
I thought you have a big family thing for
I
Cinco
do.
de Mayo.
Yeah. Next weekend on Sunday, I might be up to take Nora to the zoo.
weekend.
Indian.
Mother's Day?
Damn it! Is that Mother's Day next week?
Yep.
Oh, maybe not next weekend then.
I'll never see you.
That's okay. We got to bring Nora up sometime soon. She really wants to go to the zoo, so.
Yeah, and then the following Sunday, we're in Indy shooting engagement sessions.
No, that's even better. How about instead of us going to see you in Fort Wayne, you just come over to our house, you bring that bourbon and all those beers with you when you come to my house. Just leave them here. I'll keep them in my
bourbon and
alcohol
beer
app.
at your house. You've got plenty of bourbon and beer at your house. You don't
right
need me to
now.
bring more.
I have plenty of bourbon and beer. By next week, I'm gonna be all out, buddy.
Oh, you'll need to stock up by Mother's Day.
Yeah.
No, we have an engagement session this Sunday in Indy, and we're like, oh, we'll go see Jen and Steve. But Jen and Steve do this big family thing for Cinco de Mayo. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe it'll rain. It'll get canceled, and then we'll have to reschedule. And, of course, like the one day that it's supposed to be nice, Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So, figures.
Just figures.
Figures. I know.
Cinco de Mayo. You got big plans?
I'm excited. I have no plans other than shooting an engagement session. But I'm excited because tomorrow I'm going to see Revenger's Butt Game.
Oh, you're going to see Rear Ender's Enema game?
That's the one. I'm so excited for Revengers. Get in the game. Get in the shame game.
Dustin, I'm disappointed. I really wanted to talk to you all about that in the after show this week. I guess that'll have to wait till next week.
Yep. The old legendary Lenger's Fin Fame game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the one.
That is the one.
But I'm seeing it in the AM tomorrow, so we can always re-record the outro tomorrow.
Not going to happen.
I had to go see I have to go see it in the morning because it's the only time I could get tickets where I didn't have to sit at the front row or on the sides.
The only tickets I could get because I waited way too long was the front row, very front row in the upper right corner when I went with Ian. So we were, looking up and to the left the entire time, but totally worth it. 3 hours of crying. Oh man, felt so good.
So good.
Felt so good. It starts out on a sad note and it only gets sadder.
Perfect.
It's the most depressing movie ever.
More than like Bambi.
Yeah, much more than Bambi. Like if instead of there being like somebody's mom dying at the beginning, if instead of it was like, hey, remember how in the last one there was a snap at the end and a bunch of people disappeared? Well, we're picking up at the point of snap. So still people disappearing. Yay!
Nice. That's my favorite part in the whole movie.
Yeah. No, this movie really tugs at your heartstrings all the way through. So
perfect.
Yeah.
I don't have one of those or strings.
You're gonna grow one. It's gonna be amazing. Next week we're gonna come back on and we're gonna discuss the heart that grew up in your play and where nothing was before. The heart that
Like
grew out of
colon?
your darkness. Yes. Yeah. When you went to see Rear Enders, Endgame, Enema Game. Damn it.
And that's where they put the heart.
In your
Awkward. Yeah. The old butt heart.
All right. Well, Dustin, now that we got the butt hearts out of the way, I think it's time to go.
Yeah, I hope you had a good time just chatting with Nathan. I know I did.
I had a great time. He was a great guest. He really motivated me. It was like talking to him was kind of like watching a very Gary Vaynerchuk video where the whole time I'm just like, I could do so much more with my life. I could have energy. And then afterwards is very much like after a Gary Vaynerchuk video watching where I'm like, oh, but I don't have energy. But some of these things, they'll work. The consistency thing, I'm gonna do that. That's a good one. Just do a little bit every single day.
As long as this podcast gets edited on time, I mean, you can do whatever you want, man.
Thanks, boss. All right, let's say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Is there anything you don't want to talk about? Anything that per se is maybe off limits or is a no-go in the Nathan zone?
No, go
Okay,
to town.
perfect.
We'll have fun.
Talk about your time in porn. Perfect. All right.
Little do they know.
Wedding Photo Hangover was edited this week by Steve Van Elk of Bespoke Tone. Go to Bespoke Tone for all of your photo, video, and audio editing needs. Woo-wee!